There are so many pinball video games that at this point, it's kind of exhausting. I mean, you've got your Pokemon pinball, your Metroid pinball, your Austin Powers pinball. Point is, basically, if you're somebody who is anybody, you've got a pinball game. But there's one video game franchise I feel needs a pinball game more than any other, and that game is none other than Disco Elysium. And I know you're probably confused about this. The groundbreaking role-playing game Disco Elysium as a pinball game? I know it sounds weird, but trust me, it will all make sense once you hear me out. So, in the back of Whirling in Rags, there's a bunch of pinball machines, and basically Kim says some interesting stuff while you look at these pinball machines that really sprouted this idea about a pinball game. The lieutenant grimaces, looking at the machines. Sounds like you don't enjoy pinball, Kim. No, I love it. I love pinball. Who doesn't love pinball? Let's move on. He doesn't. Then, after a bit more conversing, this prompt comes up. Think. Kim Kitsuragi. Kim Kitsuragi. Kim Pinball Kitsuragi? AKA Kimball? Exactly. That's what he's known as. His reputation precedes him. He puts his glasses back on. Fine. I was a juvenile police officer for over 15 years. It's how I started out in the RCM. Once I had to infiltrate a pinball ring, as you do when you're a juvie cop. It was not okay. I needed to become a pinball champion. I trained for 9 months. The job was successful and I was moved out of the juvenile wing to homicide. And when I first heard this, I was like, damn, I want a Kimball video game. I mean, when you think about it, the premise totally lines up with Disco Elysium. In Disco Elysium, there's the case of the hanged man, and that's kind of used as a centerpiece to frame the world around in that game. And with a potential Kimball game, you have the case of trying to infiltrate the pinball ring to frame a world around. And there's so much cool stuff that could be done with this, like exploring Kim more as a character and just giving more context to the world of Disco Elysium. But I digress. Before I talk more about the pinball aspect I emphasized in the beginning of the video, I'd like to show a video from the lead designer of Disco Elysium, Robert Kurvitz, which I think will strengthen my point about a pinball game.
By the point we started really doing pre-production on Disco Elysium, something called the CRPG Renaissance was on its way. We weren't seeing perhaps the kind of mad, reckless experimentalism that we'd expect from a genre after so many decades of it existing, as CRPGs had. Our starting point was to innovate like crazy, you know, even for the sake of it. Take everything we sort of thought was important from the tabletop experience and then just try to get it across in a CRPG.
So there's a few things I'd like to mention about what Robert said, mainly focusing on his words about innovation. When he talks about the CRPG renaissance of the early to mid 2010s, I think he nails it right on the head when he says there wasn't a lot of innovation going on. I mean, that doesn't mean these games weren't fundamentally sound or anything, it's just they didn't take a lot of risks, but that's something that Disco Elysium didn't do. And if there was a genre of game that was in great need of taking risks or innovation, I'd say it'd be pinball. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff done with pinball games other than just being standard pinball, but if Zom were to make a Kimball video game, I'd just say go crazy. Perhaps add RPG mechanics to pinball or even a skill tree. I mean, the sky's the limit for this. And you could still keep the amazing RPG mechanics that make Disco Elysium Disco Elysium. And you can do this all while staying consistent with various themes of Disco Elysium and being consistent with Kim Kitsuragi lore as well. But hey, I think this is a good idea not just for Zom, but perhaps even a fan game. But hey, thanks for listening to my spiel about this. I thought it was not just only an interesting part of Disco Elysium's lore, but hey, I thought it'd be a good game concept as well. So thanks for watching and peace.